from the National News Studio, Sri Lanka.
Hello and welcome to the National News. We are coming to you live from the National News Studio. I'm Delanjali Ananda. Joining me is Charita Minipurarachi. And these are the top stories making headlines today.
Petco fuel, bus fares and bakery product rates increase. Upholding the 19th Amendment to the Constitution with essential revisions is a short-term solution at this juncture, Prime Minister says. International Monetary Fund praises the steps taken by the new Finance Minister to ease the crisis in the country. Protest in several parts in the country today. American Treasury Secretary decides to boycott the financial meeting of G20. And in a special announcement, the police curfew has been imposed in Rambukana Police Division following a tense situation in that area. The police have requested the public to remain calm and stay indoors during this period. Also, the police have requested motorists to avoid the area and use alternative routes. The police curfew was imposed following a tense situation occurred in Rambukana this afternoon. One person had died and 24 injured from that incident. After protesters and the police clashed, 8 police personnel have also been injured from this incident.
In other stories, Ceylon Petroleum Corporation increased the fuel prices effective midnight yesterday. Accordingly, the new rate of 92-octane petrol litre is at 338 rupees. The rate of 95-octane petrol litre has been increased to 373 rupees. The new rate of a litre of diesel is at 289 rupees, while super diesel litre is priced at 329 rupees. Meanwhile, private passenger transport services employees engaged in protests in various parts of the country objecting the recent fuel price hike. Correspondents have mentioned that passengers were severely affected from these protests. Minister Dilum Amanugama said, Minister Dilum Amanugama said that bus fares have to be increased in a fair basis for both bus owners and passengers. The minister made these remarks following a meeting held with private bus owners today. Now, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, addressing the Parliament today, says that enforcing the 19th Amendment to the Constitution with essential revisions is a short-term solution which can be taken at this juncture.
Meanwhile, Speaker Mahinda Rupavahini informed the Chamber over the decisions and reached by party leaders regarding the present crisis. Speaker Mahinda Rupavahini said that despite various attempts made during the parliamentary debates on 5th, 6th and 7th April 2022 to find short-term and long-term solutions to the current crisis in the country through parliament, no positive solution has been reached. However, he said that further discussions were held on 5th, 8th April 2022 with the participation of leaders of the political parties represented in the parliament and the members of the Committee of Parliamentary Business in view of the need to take some positive steps in this regard. He added that a number of proposals were discussed, such as amending the Constitution and related laws to subject ministers and Constitution and related laws to subject ministers and members of Parliament to supervision of the Auditor General. He also said that suggestions were made to introduce relevant amendments to allow the Auditor General to audit political parties, prohibit the procurement of goods and services without bidding for government contracts. He further noted over the amendment of legislation to allow the government to seize assets which are found to have been illegally deposited in foreign banks or financial institutions by politicians, their relatives or public servants, and prohibit dual citizens from being elected to Parliament and the Presidency.
බවට හෙළිවන වත්කම් රජයට පවරාගත හැකි වන පරිදි අදාළ අනපනත් සංශෝධනය කිරීම නිත්‍ය පුරවැසියන් පාර්ලිමේන්තු මන්ත්‍රී ධුරයට හෝ ජනාධිපති ධුරයට තෝරාපත් කරගෙන ලැබීමට නුසුදුසු බවට අවශ්‍ය නීති සම්පාදනය කිරීම යනාදී යෝජනා රැසක් මීට සාකච්ඡා වූ බව මෙහිදී අවධාරණය කරනු කැමැත්තෙමි.
ආණ්ඩුවත් කවදාවත් කැමැත්තෙන් තමන්ගේ
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa said that no government would deliberately cause difficulties upon their people. However, he said that the people in the country are currently, however, facing many difficulties. He further said that the public are facing various other difficulties stemmed from visible crises, including power, fuel and gas shortages. The Prime Minister said that all should gather together at this critical juncture to come out of the crisis situation faced by the nation. Therefore, he said that they invited earnestly to other parties, despite being the opposition, to rebuild the nation without any discrimination. He reminded that the same invitation is still valid for all. The Prime Minister pointed out the importance in economic management to overcome the crisis in the country. Accordingly, he added that 3 renowned economic specialists with international experience in economic management sector have been appointed in this regard. Also, he said that negotiations are underway with various international agencies, including IMF, World Bank and Asian Development Bank. The Premier added that positive responses have reached from these agencies thus far. Furthermore, he said that friendly nations have extended necessary assistance at this juncture to successfully manage the prevailing economic crisis. He added that the solutions for this pertaining crisis should be reached through negotiations. Accordingly, the Premier said that he invited the groups which are engaging in protest at Golf Face Green. He said that the government came forward to obtain their valuable opinions in this regard. The Prime Minister further said that the President had the steps to said have already been taken to manage fuel and gas shortage in the next couple of weeks. He further pointed out that importance in maintaining a sound economic, political and stability social to find solutions in this economic crisis. Therefore, he said that he believes that the most practical and short-term solution in this regard is a constitutional amendment. Accordingly, as the initial steps, the Prime Minister said that enforcing the 19th Amendment to the Constitution with essential revisions is a short-term solution which can be taken at this juncture.
මා විශ්වාස කරනවා. ඒ ආරම්භක පියවරක් ලෙස 19 වෙනි ආණ්ඩුක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධනය අත්‍යවශ්‍ය හා කාලීන සංශෝධන සහිතව ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදීව බලාත්මක කිරීම කෙටි කාලීනව ගත හැකි කාලෝචිත විසඳුම් බවයි මගේ විශ්වාසය. මේ ඔස්සේ යමින් අතිගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේද ආශිර්වාද ඇතිව බලය ගේ නොමෙතෙන්ට.
නෑ අහගන්නකො පොඩ්ඩක්.
ආගන්නකො. බලය ඔයාලට දෙනවයි කියලා කිව්වමත් ඒත් කැමති නෑ. පුළුල් නව ආණ්ඩුක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධනයක් දක්වා අපි ගමන් කළ යුතු වෙනවා. ඒ වෙනුවෙන් අපි ගන්නා වෑයමට පක්ෂ විපක්ෂ ભેදයකින් තොරව ඔබ සමගී සහායත් ජනතා ආශිර්වාදයක් ලැබෙනු ඇතයි මා අපේක්ෂා කරනවා.
අග්‍රාමාත්‍යතුමා කියනවා.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa said that they would not be content after enforcing the 19th Amendment. He said that the executive presidency should be abolished. He said that a progressive group joined the opposition after realizing the reality. Accordingly, he said that necessary steps will be taken to provide solutions to the affected people who are engaging in a mass protest following progressive discussions with all stakeholders.
සත්‍ය තේරුම්ගෙන යථාර්ථය අවබෝධ කරගෙන අද විපක්ෂයක් සමග ප්‍රගතිශීලී කණ්ඩායමක් අත්වැල්වන ගත්තා. අපි ඉන්න පාර්ශ්වයේ වාඩි වුණා. අපි සූදානම් ඒ සියලු දෙනාත් සමග ප්‍රගතිශීලීව සාකච්ඡා කරලා ජනාරගලේ මහපාරේ ඒ දුක් විඳින ජනතාවට විසඳුම් ලබා දෙන්නට අපි අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම කටයුතු කරනවා. අපි පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ 40
MP Vimal Veeravansh said that they are a group of 40 MPs who will act as an independent group in the parliament with no intention to agree with the negative initiatives of the ruling party or support narrow-minded objectives of the opposition.
සම්බන්ධයකුත් නැහැ. ඒ නිසා කවුරුත් කාගේවත් සාක්කුවට ඔඩක්කුවට අපිව දාගන්න කලබල වෙන්න එපා කියලා බොහොම මුණාවෙන් ඉල්ලනවා. දෙපැත්තම සංසුන් වෙන්න.
Former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe said that he has only one request, and that is to repeal the 20th Amendment. He said that all should work together to enforce the 19th Amendment. He also said that a budgetary revision is essential to determine ways to provide relief.
19 සංශෝධන ඉදිරිපත් කරපු අගමැතිවරයා හැටියට ආපහු මේක රටට ගෙනියන්න. මම එකම ඉල්ලීමයි තියෙන්නේ. කරුණාකරලා 20 වෙනි සංශෝධනය පුළුවන් තරම් විගහට රෙස්පෙක්ට් එකට යවන්න. 19 අපි මෙතෙන්ට ක්‍රියා කරමු. ඒව කරන්න ඕමනයි. අපි කොහොමද සහන දෙන්න කියලා මේ අයවැය සංශෝධනය කරන්න ඕන. අපේ වැරද්දන් නිසා ඒගොල්ලෝ එතන කෑ ගහන්නේ. ඒ කෑ ගහන්නේ ජනාධිපතිතුමාට විතරක් නෙමෙයි දැන් 225ටම අරගත්තා. මේ තරුණ තනි අතීතයේ වාගේ අවියවද අතට ගත්තේ නැහැ. කැරලි ගැහුවේ නැහැ. සාමකාමී ගාමීව කියන්නේ අපිට ව්‍යවස්ථාවෙන් ඕන කියලා විසඳුමක්.
අපි බොහොම වගකීමෙන් රට වැටුණු මේ
Leader of the House, Minister Dinesh Gunawardena, said that the ruling party as the government is prepared to work together in cooperation with the President and the Prime Minister on this measure which have been undertaken to resolve the prevailing crisis.
සහයෝගයෙන් කටයුතු කරන්න අපි අඛණ්ඩව සූදානම්.
Minister Kanchana Wijesekara gave an update over the fuel crisis in the country in the parliament today. Minister Kanchana Wijesekara said that based on the previous price rates, Ceylon Petroleum Corporation sustained a daily loss of 1,613 million rupees. He further added that the CPETCO will still sustain a loss of 327 million rupees even with the price increase. He added that the President had instructed them not to increase the rates of diesel and kerosene in an exorbitant manner. However, he said that the government understands that the price hike would impact on the livelihoods of many. Yet the minister said that these decisions have to be taken considering the present climate of the country along with existing fuel rates in the world market and dollar rate in order to ensure continuous supply of power and in future. This move was advanced, the minister said, in order to obtain necessary funds required to purchase fuel. He further said that the President has instructed to take any necessary steps to provide relief, if possible, for other sectors.
And meanwhile, Minister Professor Channa Jayasubramanian briefed the Parliament over the situation related to the health sector in the country. Minister Professor Channa Jayasubramanian said that health authorities have clearly said that no death related to medicine shortage have been reported in the country so far. He added that the government has informed the Parliament since February 8th over the difficulties in acquiring medicines due to the dollar issue. The minister said that even though letters of credit were supposed to be opened since the first week of January, they have to wait until the first week of April in this regard. However, he said that relevant dollars required to open letters of credit have been received through Sri Lanka government, World Bank and Asian Development Bank. However, due to the delays occurred in opening these letters of credit, an overall delay has occurred in the importation of purpose of the medicine. He further added that a 90-day delay can also be observed for certain drugs, which would create a shortage in the next 3 months. However, he said that all necessary measures have been taken by the ministry to reduce the impact from the possible shortage. The minister said that a hotline has been introduced under the name also Osudiriya to inform such requirements. Accordingly, he said that a mechanism is in place through the National Medicines Regulatory Authority to accelerate the process to fulfill various pharmaceutical requirements through local manufacturers. He further said that the following negotiations with World Health Organization, the agency has obtained a list from the ministry and agreed to provide necessary assistance in this regard. He also said that World Bank Director for South Asian region has agreed to provide necessary assistance to purchase required drugs in the country. He further said that the Red Cross organization has also informed following negotiations to provide necessary assistance in this regard. He said that if the health sector could manage this situation in the next 90 days, they should be able to overcome drugs and surgical items shortage. An International Monetary Fund has praised Finance Minister Ali Sabri for the measures already taken to ease the prevailing crisis situation in Sri Lanka.
This was revealed during a meeting held between the Finance Minister and IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva yesterday. The meeting was held in IMF headquarters in Washington, D.C.
Accordingly, IMF has agreed to provide its fullest supports to the country and necessary strength to resolve the existing crisis through its expertise. At the meeting, the Finance Minister requested the IMF Managing Director to expedite the process for the allocation of financial assistance to Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, the Minister has been informed that India will represent Sri Lanka in the related process. Minister Sabri also met with Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman yesterday. During the meeting, India has said that the maximum support will be extended to strengthen the country's economy. Several more rounds of discussions in this regard will be held in future. Secretary to the Treasury Mahinda Siriwardena and Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Virasinghe were present at this occasion.
Now, President's Counsel Mohan Veerakoon, who appeared for the High Court trial over the Easter Sunday terrorist attack, says that the statement made by the former Attorney General regarding the Easter terrorist attack is baseless.
And meanwhile, remarks were also shared over the issues directed by Reverend Father Cyril Gamini Fernando over the Easter Sunday attack, and he made these remarks while taking part in an interview.
Reverend Father Cyril Gamini Fernando said that various allegations have claimed that the Easter Sunday attack is political conspiracy. He then inquired over the investigations conducted by Criminal Investigation Department thus far to reject this claim. President's counsel Mohan Veerakorn said that former Attorney General Dapla de Oliveira claimed that the Easter Sunday attack is a political conspiracy. He made this claim a week before his retirement, according to the President's counsel. He further said that former Attorney General was appointed a week after the Easter Sunday attack. He further pointed out that the former Attorney General had 2 years and a month to inform the police to conduct an investigation if it was a conspiracy. He inquired the reason for the former Attorney General to make such a statement without fulfilling his responsibility as the chief legal officer in the country prior to his retirement. Today is the 11th day of the protest underway in Golf Face Green in Colombo.
The protest, organised with the participation of youth groups, commenced on last night. Large number of participants and protesters in front of the presidential secretariat throughout the day.
National People's Power commenced their protest march this morning from the Katubedda housing complex in Moratua. The march was heading towards Colombo. Many activists, including parliamentarian Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, Tilvin Silva, Vasanta Samarasinghe and Sunil Handunatti were present at this occasion. The protesters arrived at the Vihara Mahadevi Park in Colombo this evening. Meanwhile, a group of people engaged in a protest while blocking all roads leading to Rambukana town.
And meanwhile, the Health Ministry informs that wearing of face masks except for public transport and air-conditioned places is no longer necessary.
However, face masks can be worn in any place at will.
COVID-19 pandemic was first emerged from Wuhan, China in the month of December 2019. Wuhan was locked down with the spread of the COVID-19 and steps were taken to repatriate Sri Lankan students in the city of February 1, 2020. This was achieved with the mediation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Sri Lanka is among the first countries to repatriate its citizens who were stranded in Wuhan. The first COVID-19 detection in the country was a Chinese national and she was detected on January 27, 2020. The first Sri Lankan COVID-19 patients were detected on March 10th in 2020. Travelers arriving into Sri Lanka from the countries with a surge of COVID-19 were directed to quarantine during this period. Also, COVID-19 infected patients were then admitted to Angkor National Infectious Disease Hospital. Later, steps were taken to establish COVID treatment centers across the country. Subsequently, home care program for COVID-19 infected patients were commenced last year. The country had to be locked down in the month of April in 2020 with the spread of COVID-19. Simultaneously, a task force was established for the distribution of essential commodities for the public. Steps were taken to provide the 5,000 rupee allowance for the affected public in 3 occasions amidst the economic difficulties. The highest number of COVID-19 patients were detected from the country on the August 27th last year with 6,373. The highest number of COVID-19 related deaths was reported on the 30th 30th of the same month with 216 deaths. After ensuring the use of immunization vaccines to control the pandemic through the various studies, the government took steps to inoculate the public for the virus. Accordingly, public were inoculated with both doses of immunization vaccines as well as the booster dose, which is still underway in the country. Sri Lanka ranked among the first 5 nations in the world of immunization. The government prioritized the vaccination program, and the expenditure related to the program was borne despite the foreign exchange crisis. Vaccination and strict adherence to COVID-19 guidelines led to a significant drop in both COVID-19 infections and in deaths in the country. The mandate on the compulsory wearing of face masks were relaxed under such climate. And meanwhile, the Ukrainian military has said that the Russian forces are carrying out aggressive actions to establish full control of the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. Russian forces continue to the movement of weapons and military equipment to Ukraine from the central and eastern regions of Russia. Russian troops continue to partially block Kharkiv city in northeastern Ukraine. The main focus of the Russian military is to break through Ukrainian army defense in the Luhansk and Donetsk region, as well as to establish full control over the southern port of Mariupol. Russia continues to use Belarusian territory to launch airstrikes and carry out air reconnaissance in Ukraine. The Ukraine military has said that the 810th Separate Marine Brigade of the Black Sea Navy lost 158 soldiers with about 500 injured and 70 people missing. Ukrainian troops have destroyed 10 tanks, 80 units of armored and 8 units of automotive equipment in the past 24 hours. Ukrainian Air Force has 7 targets, including 1 fighter aircraft, 4 unmanned aerial vehicles and 2 winged missiles yesterday. Ukrainian Prime Minister has said that the Ukrainian forces defending the besieged port of Mariupol will fight to the end against Russian troops. In an interview, the Ukrainian Prime Minister said that Russia's deadline for Ukrainian forces in Mariupol to surrender by Sunday had been ignored. It is reported that the Russian military says it controls almost all of Mariupol, while Ukrainian Azov battalion is still holding out at Azovstal, a huge steel plant overlooking to the Azov Sea. Ukrainian says there will be no humanitarian corridors to evacuate civilians trapped in conflict areas for a 3rd consecutive day because there has been no agreement with Russia. Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk said that intensive shelling continues in the Donetsk region of eastern Ukraine, where officials say that Russia has launched a major offensive after being threatened in efforts to capture the capital, Kyiv.
Now on news back at home, Chairman of the Colombo Stock Exchange, Tumit Fernando, says that the difficult decision to close the CSE for 5 days was reached in order to protect and retain investor confidence and out of public interest. He made these remarks while addressing a media briefing yesterday.
We have to look at things in its totality and make sure that we are sometimes making decisions that are in preserving the overall interests. And I must say, given the new SEC Act's responsibility posed on us of investor protection, clearly this decision we made was weighted heavily towards investor protection. We had a constructive discussion with the Chamber, for example, that has expressed its views on the market closure because, many of the listed companies are obviously members of the Chamber, and we have explained that. The new SEC Act is fairly clear. Clearly the objects and purpose of an exchange or market institution are very clearly stated in the Section 24 of Part 2 of the SEC Act. The first is to promote a fair, orderly, transparent and efficient securities market in Sri Lanka. 2, to enhance effective and efficient functioning of a securities market. And 3, to mitigate systemic risk of the securities market. And it also goes on to say it is a duty of any director of the exchange that requirement for public interest and investor protection supersedes any other requirement of duties and responsibilities that are even in the articles of the Colombo Stock Exchange. There's a statutory expectation and an obligation for us to look after the public interest, especially with regard to investor protection. Our priority was to act fast. If we felt that the factors pointed towards some kind of intervention, we didn't want that to rest for a while. Just to be very clear, we are not saying the 5-day closure is going to fix all these problems. What we know is those factors that I mentioned, I'll go through one of them. We feel there is an ability of a short 5-day closure to help some of those factors that create a fair and orderly market and therefore lead to protecting investors. The CSE and its board firmly believe in the fact that we need to have open markets, that we are a place that provides liquidity. So that is our long-term and short, medium and long-term goal. However, I don't think we can ignore the statutory responsibilities that we have in terms of the new SEC Act. So we have taken some actions to have a short-term intervention to create the conditions that will create a fair, orderly, efficient and effective market. The decision has been taken to the best of the information that we have, but of course take into account hundreds of years of collective experience we have as a board. This was not a decision taken very easily. In fact, several weeks ago, I think there were still demands from some stakeholders to close the market, and the result was it did not close because we put a high bar on when a market should be closed. But we are looking to make sure that once these factors that I mentioned, if those can be addressed in this period, that we will be able to go back to an open market. This is not, the board did not recommend or decide on a long-term closure. We want to balance different factors that create a fair and orderly and efficient market. And to take this decision, we stand behind it, and we will see how it goes. Just like investors, we are making a decision with imperfect information, but we had to make a decision, and that is where we are.
And newly sworn in cabinet and state ministers assumed in their ministerial duties in their respective ministries today. Dr. Nalaka Godaheva, who was appointed as the new Minister of Mass Media, assumed in his duties at the ministry today. Minister of Trade and Samurdhi Development Shahan Singh assumed in his duties at the Ministry of Samurdhi. Minister of Transport and Industries Dilum Amunugama assumed in his duties at the Ministry of Industries. Parliamentarian S.B. Disanaika and Secretary to the Ministry of Industries Judaya Ratnaika were present at this occasion. New Minister for Plantation Industries and Education Dr. Ramesh Pathirana also assumed in his duties. Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation Janaka Kumbara assumed in his duties today. State Minister of Cooperative Services, Business Development and Consumer Protection Gunapala Ratnasekara assumed in his duties at the relevant state ministry. State Minister from Mahavali Sripala Gamlat assumed in his duties at the ministry premises today. New State Minister of Health Dr. Gayashan Navananda assumed duties at the Health Ministry premises. Minister Professor Channajaya Sumana was also present at this occasion. Meanwhile, Minister Prasanna Ranatunga assumed duties as the Chief Government Whip at the respective office in Parliament. Ministers and parliamentarians were present at this occasion. He is also the Minister for Tourism and Public Security.
Now, the anti-terrorism court in Lahore sentenced 6 people to death after convicting them for their roles in last year's vigilant killing of a Sri Lankan factory manager accused by workers of committing blasphemy.
The 6 men sentenced to death were convicted of murder of Priyantha Kumara Devadana.
The anti-terrorism court in Lahore, set up inside a high-security prison, also gave life sentences to 9 people, 5 years jail to 1 and 2-year sentences to 72, according to a statement from the public prosecutor. 8 of those sentenced were juveniles. Devadana was killed in December by workers at a sports equipment factory in Pakistan's eastern Sialkot district, where he was a manager. Few issues are also languishing in Pakistan as blasphemy and even the slightest suggestion of an insult to Islam can surcharge protests and incite violence. The prosecution team worked very hard to present its case to the court and to reach the judgment. Abdul Rahu Vatu, a lead public prosecutor, told reporters the special anti-terror court was established to speed up justice in high-profile cases that can otherwise spend years being processed. That's all we have on local news. We'll be back with international stories after this break.
Creama Kottumi, hot and spicy Nava Vasarak Veva. Creama Kottumi. මහත්තුමි hot and spicy නව වසරක් වේවා.
Welcome back with international news. A suspected twin suicide bombing outside a boys' school in the Afghan capital Kabul has killed at least 6 people and wounded 11, officials say. The blast happened at the Abdul Rahim Shahid High School in the Shah-dominated west city of. The number of dead and wounded is likely to rise. A nearby tuition center was also targeted in a grenade attack. There was no immediate claim of responsibility. The sources from Muhammad Ali Jinnah Hospital in Kabul told media that they have received 4 dead bodies and 19 injured people so far from the school attack. Students were leaving morning classes when the blast happened, the officials said.
ක්‍රීමා කොත්තුමි hot and spicy නව වසරක් වේවා.
Sports news is about cricket and the IPL. Rajasthan Royals secured victory against Kolkata Knight Riders in an Indian Premier League match played yesterday.
The match was played in Mumbai. Batting first, Rajasthan Royals was able
And that's all the news we have for tonight. Do join us tomorrow for the primetime news at 8:50 p.m. on Rupavahini. I'm Delanjali together with Charita signing off for tonight.